In the mid-2000s, the History Channel grew in popularity with its captivating car-themed shows. The series entertained and drew in a diverse and enthusiastic audience. Seeking to broaden its appeal further,
Danielle Colby is finally opening up about Frank Fritz, and it's a big deal for American Pickers fans. For years, people have been wondering what happened with Frank's exit and what Danielle thought about it. Now she's ready to share her side of the story, full of real feelings and facts. Stick around, because Danielle's going to clear up the rumors and spill the tea on what's really been going on behind the scenes with TV's favorite picking duo. Danielle's journey didn't start with the spotlight. Back in 2010, when American Pickers first kicked off, she wasn't yet a TV star. She was just a friend, helping out Mike Wolf and Frank Fritz. Mike and Frank were the ones on the road, digging through barns and finding treasures. Danielle was back in Iowa, running Antique Archaeology, the shop where they sold their finds. She answered calls, tracked down leads, and made sure everything ran smoothly. Fans quickly fell for her tattoos, her fun vibe, and how real she was. But she wasn't just there for the looks. Danielle was the one keeping everything in check while Mike and Frank did their thing. Mike and Frank were the heart of the show. Growing up in Iowa, they were childhood buddies who both loved old junk. Danielle saw how well they clicked. Mike was always the dreamer, talking about saving history, while Frank was the quieter one, getting into the details like how an old toy worked. Sometimes they'd argue, Mike wanting a rusty sign and Frank eyeing a motorcycle part, but it was fun to watch. Danielle would laugh when they called her, joking about who won the day. She loved being part of the team, even if she wasn't in the van with them. The early days were simple. Mike and Frank would hit the road in their white van, picking through people's stuff for hidden gems, while Danielle made sure the shop was ready for whatever they brought back. She'd hear stories about their trips, finding a beat-up bike or an old sign, and help figure out what to do with it. People started coming to the shop just to see her, asking about Mike and Frank. It was exciting, but Danielle could tell things wouldn't stay easy forever. As the show grew, so did the problems. She got to know Mike and Frank pretty well. Mike was always pushing forward, full of ideas, while Frank liked to take things slower, focusing on the details. Danielle fit perfectly in the middle. She'd chat with Mike about his plans and check in on Frank when he sounded worn out. They trusted each other, and it felt like a little family. But even back then, she noticed some signs of tension. Frank would get quiet, and Mike would sometimes push a bit too hard. Nothing major, just hints of what might happen later. Then, American Pickers blew up, and Danielle was right there when it happened. At first, things were slow. Mike had been pitching the idea for years, filming with a shaky camera and dragging Frank along, climbing into barns and getting dirty. Danielle was helping from the shop, digging up leads for them. Networks kept saying no, thinking nobody would watch two guys picking through junk. But Mike didn't give up. Finally, in 2010, the History Channel took a chance, and bam, 3.1 million people tuned in for the first episode. Danielle couldn't believe it. The shop turned into a zoo overnight. Fans flooded in, wanting to see where the magic happened. Suddenly, Danielle was a big deal. People recognized her from the show, asking for photos. She'd smile, give them a tour, and point out cool stuff like a rusty gas pump Mike found. It was fun, but totally crazy. She had to hire extra people just to keep up with everything. The phone rang non-stop, people offering tips and fans asking about Mike and Frank. It was a wild ride. Mike and Frank were out living their dream, calling Danielle from random towns, excited about their finds. Mike once found a huge neon sign and couldn't stop talking about it, while Frank found an old fire extinguisher and acted like he'd won the lottery. Danielle would laugh, jot down notes, and get the shop ready for whatever crazy stuff Mike and Frank brought back, but it wasn't as easy anymore. The show was demanding long hours, with 250 filming days a year. She could hear it in their voices. They were worn out, but still pushing through. Fame started hitting them all in different ways. Mike dove right into it. He opened a shop in Nashville, and it took off with crowds lining up to see him. Danielle thought it was awesome that he was making his mark. Frank, on the other hand, wasn't interested in the spotlight. He stayed in Illinois, keeping his picking low-key. Danielle would tease him, saying, "You're the quiet star, huh?" He'd just grunt and change the subject. She saw how they balanced each other. Mike was loud, Frank was chill, and it worked. On TV, it was a perfect combo, and Danielle kept things steady at the shop. She had her own fans, too. People loved her tattoos, funky clothes, and that burlesque flair she brought. She'd post pictures online, and the comments would flood in. "You're the coolest," they'd say. Danielle soaked it up. It made the long days worth it, even when it was something as random as a weird doll Frank had found. She'd share little updates about the shop, and fans went wild. But she started noticing the show changing. It wasn't just about picking anymore. There were bigger crews, detailed plans, and a lot of money on the line. It felt less like an adventure and more like a job. By 2015, the cost of episodes had soared to $250,000, way more than in the beginning. Danielle could feel the pressure mounting. Mike wanted every find to be a big hit, while Frank just wanted to keep things real. She'd overhear arguments, nothing huge, just little things. Mike would say, "We need a big score," and Frank would snap, "I'm not digging for your TV moment." Danielle stayed out of it, focusing on the shop. She liked being the calm one, the one they could rely on. The show was huge now, and Danielle couldn't help but feel proud. Millions of people tuned in every week, and sometimes she'd sit back, amazed at how far they'd come from that little shop in Iowa. But deep down, she knew it couldn't stay perfect. Fame has its perks, but it also takes things away. And she wasn't sure what it was taking yet, but she could feel something brewing. For now, though, she just kept the shop running, ready for whatever came next. By 2017, Danielle could tell something was off. American Pickers was still a hit, but behind the scenes, things were starting to crumble. She wasn't out picking anymore, but she was still hearing everything from Mike and Frank. The show was huge now, with big crews, tight schedules, and huge amounts of money at stake. Mike was all in, pushing to make everything bigger. He'd call her from Nashville, excited about new shop ideas or finds, but Danielle could tell the stress was getting to him. He wanted every episode to be a hit, and that meant more work for everyone. Frank, on the other hand, was starting to pull away. His calls were fewer, and when he did call, he sounded worn out. Danielle knew he was dealing with Crohn's disease, and it was getting worse. His stomach hurt a lot, but he didn't talk about it much. She'd ask, "You okay out there?" And he'd say, "Yeah, just tired," before changing the subject. She didn't push him. He was private like that. But the crew had been talking, and Danielle started hearing that Frank was missing days and looking rough on set. She started worrying. Frank loved picking, but his body wasn't keeping up. The shop kept her busy, and fans still came in, asking about Mike and Frank. "Where's Frank lately?" they'd ask. Danielle would smile and say he was out picking, leaving it at that. She didn't want to start rumors, but she could see the signs. Frank's calls got shorter, and Mike's got busier. The show was pulling them further apart. One time, Frank called her from a shoot, mad about something Mike had said. "He's turning this into a circus," Frank grumbled. Danielle listened without picking sides. "He's just excited," she said, but Frank wasn't having it. He huffed and hung up. Danielle didn't tell Mike about it. It wasn't her fight, but it stuck with her. They used to laugh about stuff like that, not argue. She wondered if all this fame and pressure was really worth it, if it was starting to mess things up and create a big rift between them. Still, she kept the shop going, acting like everything was fine. Fans didn't see the trouble behind the scenes. The episodes still looked great. Mike and Frank were joking and finding treasures. But Danielle knew that a lot of the rough spots were edited out. Danielle wasn't ready to talk just yet. That would come later. The first words came in July 2021, and it was a game changer. She had been dodging fans and rumors ever since Frank left. People were bombarding her online with questions. "What's up with Frank?" and "Pick a side." She hated it. So she grabbed her phone, snapped a selfie with Mike, and posted it on Instagram. "Out on the road again with my best friend and big brother whom I support fully and stand behind," she wrote. Boom. She was firmly Team Mike, but that wasn't the end of it. She had more to say about Frank Fritz. She kept typing, and it got real. "I'm truly saddened for the loss of Frank on the show," she wrote. "I'm incredibly sad for his struggles. I have personally watched everything over the last decade." Danielle Colby was confirming the rumors, but not in the way everyone expected. She didn't dive into some big fight story. She just said she had seen Frank go through a lot, with health issues and possibly more. It hadn't been easy. Fans went wild, reading every word. "What struggles?" they asked. Danielle didn't spell it out. She wasn't there to gossip. She was just sharing what she knew. Then she dropped a heavy line. "Frank caused so much pain for himself that it has been hard to watch," she wrote. "I truly hope Frank receives all the help he needs to become well after years of being unwell." That hit people hard. Danielle wasn't angry. She was worried. She had watched Frank fade and it hurt her. She didn't blame him. She just hoped he would get better. It was her way of saying, "Yeah, the rumors about trouble are true, but it's not what you think." She explained why she posted. "The only reason I'm speaking to this right now is because everybody is speculating on my words," she said. "My words are being taken out of context in tabloid rags because they can't interview me." Danielle was fed up with all the fake stories twisting her silence. "Here's exactly how I feel," she added. "I hope everybody gets well." She wanted it straight from her. No rumors, no lies. She was done letting others speak for her. The fans had a lot to say after Danielle's post, and the reactions were mixed. Some were all in, calling Danielle so real for sharing her thoughts, while others wanted more, eagerly asking, "Tell us more." But Danielle didn't care about fulfilling every request. She wasn't about to reveal everything about her relationships with Mike and Frank. After all, she had been there through it all. Shop talks, road trips, the whole experience. She had always picked Mike simply because he had consistently had her back. But that didn't mean she didn't still care about Frank. Her post wasn't meant to be a bombshell or an explosive revelation. It was more of a glimpse, a way for her to speak her truth. She'd shared what she felt was important, and the rest was up for fans to figure out on their own. Life didn't stop after that post, though. The shop stayed lively, and Danielle remained a constant presence. Fans still showed up, still asked questions about what had happened behind the scenes. When they did, she'd flash them a smile and casually tell them, "Check my post," before moving on with her day. Mike kept picking, staying focused on the show, and Danielle cheered him on in her own way, online. Frank, however, stayed quiet, and Danielle didn't reach out. She had already done her part. She'd cleared the air and stated her position. The rumors about a feud between Mike and Frank were officially put to rest. What remained was something deeper. Frank's ongoing struggles, Mike's push to keep the show alive. But Danielle left it at that, allowing the fans to interpret the rest. After her 2021 post, things quieted down. But life behind the scenes wasn't easy. Frank had been removed from American Pickers, and Danielle found herself quietly watching as the fallout continued. She didn't say much online, mostly posting shop photos and dance videos to keep things light. But behind the scenes, she knew things weren't looking good for Frank. His Crohn's disease had been hard on him for years, and Danielle had heard that he was trying to improve. But recovery wasn't happening fast enough. She didn't reach out to him. She figured he needed space, so she simply hoped that he would pull through. Mike kept the show alive, continuing to push forward, and Danielle supported him from the sidelines. Occasionally, Mike would stop by the shop, looking worn out, but still managing a smile. He'd joke, "We're still picking," and Danielle would nod, happy to see that he was hanging in there despite everything. As time went on, fans began asking her about Frank less and less. Her post had already quieted some of the gossip, but Danielle still overheard whispers around the crew. Frank wasn't doing well. He was making more trips to the hospital, facing more struggles. Danielle couldn't help but feel bad. She remembered how Frank used to come into the shop, grinning ear to ear as he lugged in some rusty, forgotten treasure like a kid excited by a new find. But now, that same guy was slipping away, and watching it happen wasn't easy. Then came 2022, and it hit hard. Frank had a stroke. It was a major, terrifying event, and Danielle learned about it from a friend on the crew. Mike, without hesitation, dropped everything and rushed to be by Frank's side. Danielle didn't ask for all the details, but she heard that Mike had been there constantly, sitting by Frank's bed, bringing small things, old photographs and treasures from their picking days, to keep his spirit up. Danielle thought it was a touching gesture, a reminder that, despite the distance and silence between them, Mike still cared. As for Danielle, she didn't visit. She wasn't that close to Frank, but she still kept a close eye on the situation. Frank's recovery wasn't quick. The stroke had been severe, and he needed extensive help to get through the aftermath. It was a rough time, and Danielle was left to watch from afar, wishing Frank the best, but unsure of how much she could do. Then, in October 2024, it all came to an end. Frank passed away. Danielle heard from Mike. He sounded wrecked. "He's gone," he said. Danielle didn't know what to say, so she just listened. Mike told her he'd been there until the last day, bringing things from their picking days. Danielle felt a lump in her throat. She'd known Frank forever, his quirks, his finds. Losing him was like losing a piece of the show. She didn't post about it. She just needed a day to think. Fans didn't know the half of it. They saw Frank leave and heard about Danielle's post, but not this. Mike stayed quiet too, just a short note online about missing his brother. Danielle respected that. She didn't want to stir things up, but the rumors started again. People were saying Mike had abandoned Frank, that fame had killed their friendship. Danielle shook her head. She'd seen Mike step up. She'd seen Frank fight his body. It wasn't that simple. Months after Frank's death, Danielle Colby finally broke her silence on Frank Fritz. She confirmed the rumors, but this time it wasn't dramatic. It was simple. No drama, just the truth. "I watched it happen over the years," she said, referring to Frank's Crohn's pain. Mike didn't push him out. Frank had to stop. It was straight up Danielle, no fluff. She confirmed that it wasn't about a fight, but about a guy who couldn't keep going. "It's time to tell everything," she said, nodding to the camera. "This is for them." She laid it out clearly. Frank loved picking, but his health wouldn't let him. By 2018, he was in and out of hospitals 17 times in 2 years. Mike tried to help, moved shoots around, waited, but Frank was done. Danielle had seen it. Frank wincing on calls, Mike stressing over schedules. Frank didn't quit because he hated it. He quit because he couldn't do it anymore. It wasn't anything too shocking, but it was the truth, and that's what mattered. Fans, who had been waiting for a deeper understanding, were finally leaning in to hear what Danielle had to say. She didn't hold back. She quickly turned the focus to Mike, praising him for being there for Frank through everything. After Frank's stroke, Mike had been there every step of the way, paying the bills, bringing old treasures from their picking days to the hospital to remind Frank of better times. He stayed by Frank's side until the very end, when Frank passed away. Danielle wasn't just speculating or making guesses. She knew this because she had heard it from people close to them. Mike, she said, didn't talk much about it. But he didn't need to. His actions spoke volumes. He had shown up time and time again. Danielle made it clear that this was her way of putting to rest any rumors about a feud between the two. The idea that Mike had abandoned Frank was simply not true. It wasn't Mike's fault. Life was what got in the way. Then, Danielle got a little more personal. "I've known them from the very beginning," she shared. Frank was always the quiet one, the one who found the hidden gems. Mike, on the other hand, was the dreamer, always looking to save the big, iconic pieces. Together, they were unstoppable. A soft smile crept onto Danielle's face as she recalled the memories. She remembered how hard the fame had made things. Long, exhausting days with intense pressure. But she also made it clear that it wasn't hatred that caused their separation. The simple truth was that Frank's body just couldn't handle it anymore. There were no hard feelings. Danielle wasn't upset or saddened by it. She was just speaking honestly about what she had witnessed over the years. With that, The fans finally got the whole story, and it hit them hard. Everyone had expected some kind of dramatic reveal, something filled with drama, backstabbing, and bitterness. But that wasn't what Danielle was giving. She laughed a little, acknowledging that the truth wasn't nearly as wild as the rumors had made it out to be. Frank didn't leave because of any personal issues with Mike. He left because his health just couldn't keep up with the demands of the show. Mike had fought to keep things going, even when it was clear that Frank couldn't. Danielle had hinted at this before, in 2021. But now, after Frank's passing, she felt it was finally time to tell the full story. Back then, I didn't say more, she admitted. It wasn't the right time. But now, with Frank gone, it feels right to tell the truth. She wasn't here for the attention or the clicks. She just wanted to make sure the real story was heard. The interview may have been short, but it left an impact. Danielle made it clear that what Mike and Frank had built together was special. American Pickers had been their thing, a shared passion for hunting down hidden treasures. The show continued to thrive because of Mike's dedication, and Frank's legacy lived on in every episode. Danielle was done with the drama. No tears, no long speeches, just facts. She confirmed all the rumors, but she didn't dwell on the fluff. The fans finally got the truth straight from someone who had seen it all firsthand. There would be no more guessing. The story had been told. To wrap things up, Danielle gave her final thoughts. "That's it," she said, keeping it simple. "There was no big fight, just real life. I'm proud of them both." With that, she walked away, leaving the past behind her. Mike was still out there, continuing to pick, while Frank's time had passed. But the story was out there now, and it was Danielle's to share. It wasn't about twists or revelations. It was about closure. Danielle was content with how it all ended, and she hoped the fans would feel the same way. The full story had been revealed, and it was done on her terms. Danielle Colby had finally shared the truth about Frank's health, Mike's loyalty, and the journey they'd all been through together. The drama had been overblown. What really mattered were the tough times, the heartbreak, and the unbreakable bond that had once existed. Fans were left with one final question. Did Danielle's story match what you thought all along? Let them know in the comments, because they were reading every single one. And don't forget to hit subscribe for more updates like this. Thanks for watching.